What barriers did minority students face in the 1800s? In the mid-1800s, African Americans and women began to access higher education, but major obstacles persisted throughout the 19th century. Earning a college degree remained a challenge due to systemic exclusion, discrimination, and limited opportunities for marginalized groups. Most universities catered exclusively to middle and upper-class European American males, while individuals from diverse racial, ethnic, gender, religious, and socioeconomic backgrounds were actively discouraged from enrolling. Even when opportunities arose, minority students faced segregation, prejudice, and inadequate resources, making academic success an uphill battle. One of the greatest barriers was the outright exclusion of minority students from undergraduate and graduate programs. Many institutions simply did not accept African Americans, women, and other marginalized groups, making it nearly impossible for them to earn degrees. For women, some institutions allowed them to complete coursework but refused to grant diplomas. A well-known example is Mary Whiton Calkins, who completed all the requirements for a Ph.D. at Harvard University, but was denied the degree because she was a woman. For African Americans, the restrictions were even more severe. Before the Civil War, Black codes, laws enacted in Southern states, explicitly made it illegal for African Americans to receive an education. These laws ensured that enslaved and free Black individuals remained socially and economically powerless by preventing them from acquiring knowledge that could lead to social mobility and political activism. Even in states where education was technically legal for African Americans, systemic barriers remained. Many schools refused to admit Black students, arguing that higher education should remain exclusively for white men. When Black students were accepted, they often attended underfunded schools with inadequate resources, unqualified teachers, and poor facilities compared to white institutions. After the Civil War, Jim Crow laws reinforced segregation in public institutions, including universities. These laws ensured that Black students had fewer opportunities than their white peers, perpetuating racial inequality for generations. At the same time, racist beliefs about intelligence were used to justify exclusion from higher education. Many Americans falsely believed that African Americans and women were intellectually inferior and unsuited for rigorous academic study. These harmful stereotypes discouraged many from even attempting to pursue higher education. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, pseudoscientific theories were widely used to limit women's access to higher education and professional fields. Women were expected to fulfill traditional roles as wives, mothers, and caregivers rather than pursuing careers. Even those who remained unmarried were expected to take care of aging parents, a responsibility rarely placed on their brothers. At the same time, false scientific claims reinforced gender-based discrimination. The variability hypothesis suggested that men exhibited a wider range of intelligence, including more geniuses, while women's intelligence remained closer to the average, a theory used to justify excluding women from higher education. The women's sphere theory claimed that menstruation made women emotionally unstable and intellectually impaired, reinforcing the stereotype that they were too fragile for academia. Modern research has completely debunked these ideas, proving that men and women have equal cognitive abilities, and that menstrual cycles do not affect intelligence or decision-making. However, these false claims delayed gender equality in education for decades. In the late 19th century, many educators and scientists assumed that Black children were inherently less intelligent than white children, despite having no scientific evidence to support this claim. In 1897, psychologist G.R. Stetson conducted a study comparing memory abilities in 1,000 Black and white children in Washington, D.C. He found no difference in their ability to memorize poems, contradicting the racist assumptions of the time. However, rather than challenging racial bias, Stetson reinterpreted his findings. Instead of concluding that intelligence was not racially determined, he dismissed memorization as a poor measure of intelligence. This demonstrates how scientific bias reinforced existing prejudices rather than correcting them. In the 1800s and early 1900s, one of the biggest obstacles for African Americans pursuing psychology was the lack of research opportunities. Minority-serving colleges offered psychology courses but lacked resources, faculty, and laboratory facilities needed to prepare students for graduate programs. Segregation in Southern universities meant that African Americans were systematically excluded from most graduate schools. While some Northern universities accepted Black students, very few were admitted, making access to advanced education nearly impossible. For those of you considering graduate school today, you know that research experience is essential for admission into competitive programs. The same was true in the 1800s. Without proper training, African American students were often denied entry into higher education, significantly limiting their opportunities in the field of psychology. Even for minority students who managed to earn a degree, the challenges did not end at graduation. African American and female graduates were excluded from faculty positions at prestigious universities. Many were forced to teach at minority-serving colleges, which had lower salaries, fewer resources, and limited research funding. With fewer graduate students to mentor and fewer opportunities for professional advancement, minority scholars faced significant disadvantages compared to their white male counterparts. This lack of institutional support made it difficult for minority psychologists to establish long-term academic careers, further reinforcing racial and gender inequality in the field.